Local programming on KRWG made possible in part by viewers like you. Thank you. Now, the Las Cruces Mayoral Election Forum, presented as a public service by KRWG in partnership with the Greater Las Cruces Chamber of Commerce. And thank you so much for joining us for this forum. I'm Fred Martino.
Hello, and I'm Margie Huerta, Chair of the Greater Las Cruces Chamber of Commerce, and it's my pleasure to welcome all the viewers and the candidates who are here this evening. And on behalf of the Chamber and the Board and its members, thank you for joining us this evening. We have some important questions to ask the mayoral candidates, and so thank you for joining in this evening. I'd also like to start off by thanking the sponsors without whom this would not be possible, including the Building Industry Association of Southern New Mexico, Las Cruces Association of Realtors, the Las Cruces Bulletin, the Las Cruces Sun News, and of course our wonderful host, KRWG.
All right, and we do have some ground rules to tell you about. They're pretty simple. The candidates have 60 seconds to answer each question, and that 60 seconds may only be used to answer the question at hand. Candidates should not mention their opponents nor their opponents' positions at any time. There are no rebuttals because this is a forum, not a debate, and it's designed to field as many questions as possible. The candidates are in the left to right order of their top to bottom ballot position. So that's how we decided that, pretty simple. And our candidates are Mayor Ken Miyagishima, also Michael Huerta, and joining us, Councilor Dolores Connor. And the first question is for Mayor Miyagishima. It comes from the Chamber, and Margie has that.
Yes, and we will have 10 questions that Fred and I both will be asking. So let's get started, shall we?
Absolutely.
We're ready. Candidates, are you ready?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, very good. Okay, and this goes first to Mr. Miyagishima. How do you feel about adding a mandatory financial impact review that takes into account costs to city government, the citizens of Las Cruces, and the business community prior to passing future ordinances?
I think that's something there that we can entertain. I have a problem anytime you make something mandatory. I'd like to see the reasoning behind the ideas for that particular idea or ordinance. So basically, I'd like to see it more before you move forward on something like that.
Thank you. Mr. Huerta, you're next.
First, thank you to everyone watching. It's an important election, and your taking part in this debate in this forum is extremely important. Thank you also to the Chamber. This is something I support, and I support it for several reasons. We need to be accountable to taxpayers in Las Cruces, in particular in these difficult economic times. But more than just what the question was asked about, we need an audit of existing projects, of projects that have already taken place, like the building of City Hall. We need to know why City Hall cost more than what they said it would cost, where the money went, and how we can do better in the future. So on top of that, I support audits of existing projects and projects that have already taken place in the past few years.
Thank you. Ms. Connor, same question.
Thank you, and thank you for being here tonight and for your questions. I think that we should bring stakeholders together out of the business community that would review all of the policies that are in place right now, even related into auditing how those policies work and how they affect the business community. I have proposed in my presentations the Regional Economic Advocacy and Leadership Group, which would be stakeholders that would take all of these policies, all of these expenses, and as a citizens group, come back to the council with resolution on how to repair them, replace them, and remove them.
Thank you.
Our second question, if elected, what incentives would you suggest to attract new businesses and retain current ones? And we begin with Mr. Huerta.
Well, there are different types of incentives, and one incentive that I think we should start with is quit using the ability to condemn businesses like Moongate Water Company. If we move away from those type of anti-incentives, as I'd call them, we can show businesses, not only in town, but outside of Las Cruces, that we welcome small business and that we support you. Other incentives would include looking at the city's website. There's a great example if you go to, and I would want you to go ahead and Google this city, Noblesville, Indiana. Take a look at their website. When you go to their website, it says two things. One, it's user-friendly for current Las Cruces current business owners, but 2, it's friendly and welcoming and open to people who are looking to move into that city. We need to move our website into the 21st century so that it's more user-friendly, but also more friendly, more message-friendly to businesses outside of our community.
Councilor Connor.
Thank you. When you talk about incentives and you look at the business industry, you have to think that there's 2 types of incentives. There's financial and there's process. Financial incentives are what encourage business to move to Las Cruces or to expand their business. And financially, the City of Las Cruces has the local economic development plan that allows for incentives depending on the number of jobs that are brought in and the types of jobs that are there. And the process, I believe, also is included as to where we would need to review. I think a whole review of the process, how business is done with the City of Las Cruces, would be beneficial to remove and replace what is no longer effective.
Mayor Miyagishima.
Thank you, Fred. Well, business is extremely important to the City of Las Cruces. We receive about 70% of our gross receipts tax from businesses, so obviously that's job number 1. What we need to do is continue the funding of MOVITA, our Mesilla Valley Economic Development Alliance, and stress the economic gardening, which allows us to help our current businesses expand their current operations. We also have incentives like IRBs or industrial revenue bonds, which I think are very important. We also have incentives that we use with Sapphire Energy, which actually, if they provide so many certain amount of jobs, certain pay scale, will actually give them the land free. And as I mentioned to you about how important gross receipts tax is, it's important that we keep our competitive advantage over El Paso, so it's important that we keep our gross receipts tax and our property taxes low.
Okay, the next question will begin with Councilor Connor. What do you think when you hear the phrase, a business-friendly city?
Well, that's hard to tell here in the City of Las Cruces because I don't feel that our city is friendly to new business unless they have spent months and months of trying to jump through hoops and through the red tape that it takes to start business. Business-friendly cities should be when you come to City Hall, the whole department is working as a team to get things done. And business-friendly means that you're going to be holding hands with whatever type of business it be, a small mom and pop shop to 1,000 employees, to work them through the process. And I think that currently with the impact fees increase and other business fees that are out there, this is not a business-friendly environment, and impact fees will only stifle business further than it already has.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you for the question. I actually have been working with our city manager to develop a couple ideas regarding how to make the city a little bit more appear to be business friendly. We recognize there are some concerns, especially with some of our inspectors in our community development department. Sometimes when you pull a permit and they go out and get it inspected, they're told to do one thing, and then unfortunately later on, when it's a different inspector, they're told to take it out and do something else. So obviously what we're looking at is if we could possibly train inspectors to do both and have them continue through the entire project, that we believe will help. We also recognize that our codes department sometimes can get a little bit too, sometimes maybe the uniforms they actually wear could be a little bit more friendlier looking, especially when they go into businesses, restaurants and such. So we're looking at possibly some different type of attire to allow them to still get their job done and not look so intimidating when need be.
Thank you. Mr. Huerta.
Well, the question was, what does business friendly look like to you? And for me, it's really simple. Business friendly means that if you work hard and you play by the rules, you can get ahead in Las Cruces. That's not happening right now. If you work hard and play by the rules in Las Cruces, it's not as important as knowing one of the good old boys. A clear example, Moongate Water Company. It's not business friendly when the city of Las Cruces condemns a small business. Why? Because they can. That's not business friendly. What does business friendly look like? Business friendly looks like a modern 21st century website where you can apply online, where you can fill out forms online, submit forms online. Business friendly looks like a fast track process so that submissions into the city can be done quickly. Business friendly looks like selling the city's property downtown so that new business, private business can come in and make the changes they need to make. That's what I think business friendly looks like. Working hard, playing by the rules so that you can get ahead.
Thank you.
Our next question, are there particular industries the city should position itself to attract? And if so, How should that be accomplished? And we begin with Mayor Miyagishima.
Well, being the fact that we have such a great university here, I think it's important that we look at aerospace and engineering, agri-sciences, renewable energy such as geothermal, wind, solar, and just the other day I was talking with President Couture how we might be able to, I understand that MIT or Massachusetts Institute of Technology does some type of partnership with the city and different businesses actually owning up to 3% of their stock. And I had suggested that to the President Couture, and so she's willing to take a look at that and see how we may be able to work the city and the university so that we can also help some of our local businesses here in town as well.
Mr. Huerta.
Well, you often hear people talk about the fact that as of 2.5 or 3 months ago, China overtook the United States as the largest manufacturer in the world, and that's something we're worried about. But in the same conversation, we fail to mention that the United States still leads by far in the manufacturing of new technologies. When you look at every indicator, every characteristic that these manufacturers are looking for, Doña Ana County and Las Cruces is competitive. We can bring those manufacturing jobs, those manufacturing of new technology jobs here to Las Cruces. We also can work in the film industry, and this is something that we failed to lead on in the past few years. New Mexico, as a state, is competitive. But we're not competitive here in Las Cruces because we failed to lead an effort to bring a soundstage to Las Cruces. If we bring a soundstage to Las Cruces, not only does that bring jobs for people with PhDs and masters, but it brings jobs for working people, and it brings millions of dollars into this economy. We need to bring those jobs here, and we can.
Councilor Connor.
Industries to attract to the city of Las Cruces is to bank on those products and those research that's already being done here. One thing that is at the top of our list and has the most potential in the shortest amount of time from here moving forward is the Spaceport America. And I have been the Spaceport America supporter since day one. And based on that, there are so many manufacturing and research projects that will come from the Spaceport America to Las Cruces and will be housed right here. And including into that would be the tourism industry that would come with the number of people that will be visiting Las Cruces and being a part of our community while they take their tourists around the world and into space. And then on top of that, we have to focus on incubator systems like that at Arrowhead Research Park that gives small entrepreneurs a chance to test their product before they move into a larger business.
Okay, our next question. Several new ordinances have been and/or are scheduled to be reviewed in the near future. What is your stance on the recently passed impact fees? And we'll begin with Mr. Huerta.
I'm against impact fees for several reasons. Number one, they won't work. Here's why. When the City Council was first proposed with impact fees, they were set at a certain amount. The City Council, for political reasons, watered them down over and over and over again to where right now they're a sixth of what they were originally intended to be. What does that mean? That means that the money that we're going to need for these new projects isn't going to be there. By state law, once impact fees are put towards a new project, the city has to bear the cost of the remainder of the amount. In the best case scenario, impact fees will cover only 16% of these new projects. What does that mean? The vast majority, 84%, the rest of it will be covered by the city of Las Cruces. What does that mean for you living in Las Cruces? There's going to be less money in the city of Las Cruces to pay for the infrastructure and the roads that you need. If you live in Las Cruces and you're a current Las Crucean, make no mistake, these impact fees are going to affect your quality of life.
Councilor Connor.
Thank you. And on the impact fee subject, I voted no in favor of the last 3 impact fees that have been imposed. And the reason is that we are in an economy that is not going to be able to suffice for what is being done. Mr. Huerta is very correct. The amount that has been placed into this impact fee will never pay enough. A good example of that is the $800 that's already collected from every household when for park impact fees. When is the last time you saw a substantial park built in the city of Las Cruces? Almost 20 years ago, because impact fees cannot pay the full cost of construction. And the more we add impact fees to our municipal boundaries, the more residents will move outside of the boundary because they will have no impact fee to deal with. And so talk about sprawl. We will be moving people into the county where they have a 0 impact, but they will be using our roads and our services, and we will collect nothing under that manner. That's a tax, it's unfair, and it's costly, and the only person that pays it is the consumer.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor.
Yes, the impact fee, one of the conditions of the impact fee to be implemented on January 1st, 2013 was that if the economy had not picked up, it would not be implemented. One of the things that has been discussed at a work session, if you take the 10-year average of our building permits that have been pooled, gives you about 880 permits. Last year or current year, we're only at about 550. I'm sure you've heard reports where Albuquerque, when they removed the impact fee, it helped increase their production some to the tune of about 40%. When you add 40% to the current 550, you still don't get to the 880. So under that scenario, it still would not be implemented. So basically, the impact fee would only be implemented if the economy gets itself really back to near levels when it was in the year 2007.
Thank you.
Okay, and we move on, and recent debates in City Council included a dust ordinance and a lighting ordinance. What are your positions on these matters? And we begin with Councilor Connor.
The dust ordinance is unfair to the community as a whole. The dust ordinance would be restricting those people that are doing construction or have moved dirt around the city. The biggest dust created in the city of Las Cruces is out of the farming area. We do not want to stifle our farming industry here. But the second largest property owner in the city of Las Cruces is the city. And we could not even afford to control our own dust. And yet we have a problem with residents who have suffered some damage to their homes from dust, but we live in that area. The dust control would be totally unfair to all those involved. The lighting ordinance, we have a lighting ordinance. It's been expanded and it needs to be continued, but it doesn't need to hinder business more. What's in place is already sufficient.
Mayor.
I received criticism for not supporting the lighting ordinance as was proposed. I believe public safety is more important. As a father, I want to make sure that if my daughter was working at a business that it was well lit, as opposed to being allowed someone to be able to use the lighting for other, or lack of lighting, so that they can do other things. I think it's important that that be kept in mind. As far as the dust ordinance, I think there are certain parts of it that I would support, especially when you have a builder who clears a lot next to you and then decides not to build it, and then it accumulates dust and it messes one's landscaping and causes a lot of damage to that. As far as some of the other proposals, I've been able to at least stop it or have those somewhat removed. I think it needs to be a balance on when it comes to the dust ordinance.
Mr. Huerta.
Well, I think my opponents did a good job of defining our opposition to the lighting ordinance. But when it comes to the dust ordinance, it's a clear example of where we need common sense in city government. I don't think there's any clearer way to say it than this. We live in the desert. If that's too much of a question for you, I'm sorry. But we live in the desert, and the dust ordinance is not something that I support. But the bigger question when we talk about ordinances like this, we have to remember the #1 challenge we face in Las Cruces is how we put people back to work, how we lift people out of poverty, and how we create an education system that is innovative and competitive across our region. Instead, what we do is we spend our time on ideological battles, like red light cameras, which I'm against, like the condemnation of Moongate Water Company that I'm against, and like the dust ordinance that I'm against. We need common sense back in city government.
Okay, our next question. If the state were to remove the hold harmless clause, what would you suggest the city do to make up for the lost revenue? Mr. Mayor, we begin with you.
Actually, that's a great question, because we've had that exercise. Currently, one of the two things that I have proposed that the city look at doing is, one is called a flex pay or flex time, would allow those workers who don't have a whole lot of interaction with the public for a slight reduction in pay, it's strictly voluntary, to be able to work out of home. They would save on gas, on dry cleaning, on various things, and it would save the city over $1.5 million. We're also would be looking at a health wellness proposal to get our employees a little bit healthier, because we do spend a lot on healthcare costs, and that would project us to save about another $1 million. We recognize that the state probably wouldn't take the full $6 million all at one time. They would probably do it in a 10% increment each year over 10 years. So we feel confident that this $2.5 million head start would help us a long way.
Thank you. Mr. Huerta.
Well, the mayor has some good ideas. Another one that we can add in, because we have to remember, we need to save money everywhere that we can. One of the ways we can do that is cut the salary of every single city politician in half. I think that politicians should not be exempt from the sacrifices that every single one of us have to make, and as your question described, an even greater sacrifice. So we need to find money everywhere we can. The other part needs to be a real education with Las Cruces so that they understand what's taking place, why city government has to cut back again, why we're all in this together. That's my approach.
Councillor Connor.
The hold harmless is something that came into play in 2004 when the grocery tax was removed. And with that, the state held municipalities harmless from the losses that they would take. If the state legislature and the governor were to take back the hold harmless, what that means to the city of Las Cruces in 1 year alone is $6 million. That's what is currently collected off of the hold harmless. To understand the hold harmless situation is not just where you would cut, but what would happen at the time that that actually came into play. It would be July 1st of whatever year that was signed into place. There's discussion that it might be taken 10% for the next 10 years. That was an option from Senator John Arthur Smith, but it was not approved by the legislation. It could happen today at this next session instantly. And this year they took $200,000 for administrative fees.
Thank you.
All right, and we continue with state issues. State funding will likely be more competitive in the future. If you're elected, how will you work to ensure that Las Cruces receives the most state funding possible? And we begin with Mr. Huerta.
This is probably one of the more important questions thus far that we've asked, because it deals with what is the job of mayor. And that's something I'd ask every Las Crucean to research for yourself. Look at our city charter and ask yourself, read through it, what's the job of mayor? You may be surprised to learn that the mayor is not part of the executive branch of government. According to our charter, the mayor is a ceremonial position that, quote, shall not have any administrative duties. What's the job of mayor then? To be the best advocate, lobbyist, and spokesperson for the city. To answer your question, what can we do at the mayoral level? Find the best advocate, the best lobbyist, and the best spokesperson to go to Santa Fe and fight and lobby and bring those monies down here. That's what the job of mayor is, and that's really the choice that you have in this election.
Councillor Connor.
Moving into the mayor's position, I've already been the advocate, lobbyist, and spokesperson for the city of Las Cruces. I'm the past president of the New Mexico Municipal League, representing 103 municipalities. I've sat at commission meetings in Santa Fe and fought for the TID for Las Cruces when no other councilor or mayor showed up that day. I have been the lobbyist through New Mexico First also, a nonpartisan think tank that brings communities together. I've also advocated with Mavita and others in the regional education initiative through the bridge. So as a spokesperson, my spokesperson talents come from all of the nonprofit organizations that I have supported, which are Mesilla Valley Casa, Big Brothers, Big Sisters, and a program I created for students called Today's Kids, Tomorrow's Future. So I've already advocated, I've already been a lobbyist, and I've already been a spokesperson for Las Cruces, and I haven't even stepped into the mayor's seat yet.
Mayor Miyagishima.
Thank you. Well, one of the things that, in addition to being ceremonial head, the charter allows me to also propose programs and policies. And so what I did is a few months ago, actually beginning of the year, I had a work sessions where we sat down, the entire council and I, and we recognized the possibility of reduced funding. And so we basically broke it into 5 parts, level 1 through level 5. Level 5 being the utmost worst case scenario, as if they were to take the $6 million away. We have it broken down through level 1, level 2, all the way to, like I said, 5. And so we can actually reduce the budget, and we can go all the way to about level 3 before we start having to cut any type of services. We've done that in the past. In fact, this last year, we really didn't receive much, and so we were still able to save $7.5 million in the last 2 years. So we've proven that we can get this done.
Okay, our next question. Would you support a tax increase without bringing it first to a vote of the people? And we begin with Councilor Connor.
A tax increase, I would not be supportive of a tax increase without the voters being a participant. And I think that at the time, if that were the case, it would be the voters making that request. The city has to learn to live within its budget. A tax increase, whether it be property or any other type of tax, is not the way to treat our citizens. We have a lot of citizens living on fixed incomes. We have a lot of citizens who are unemployed. And to tax our community any further is just burdensome and irresponsible. And I think that at the point that we can no longer live within our budget, it's time for the city of Las Cruces to back off of what we're doing, and we learn to do what every household has to do every single day, which is stop spending and look at what is the priority of your business. And that's, I would never support a tax increase without a referendum brought to the people.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor.
Absolutely not. In fact, during the discussion, during the impact fees, there were many people in the audience who asked that we raise gross receipts tax and raise property tax, or raise property tax, either or, to help fund this, the costs. And that's why I voted for the impact fee, because I believe that it was just really merely, I didn't want to have any type of increase on our residents, and so I believe that I was able to show that I protected our residents by not having that type of tax put forth to them.
Thank you. Mr. Huerta.
The answer is no, and here's why. I was walking this morning, going around meeting voters, and I met a senior citizen, retired, who told me that for the first time in her life, she wonders whether or not she's going to have enough money to eat at the end of the month. I came across a young couple who told me they had to sell their wedding rings just to pay for their utility bills. Times are tough. Like Dolores said, every household is having to determine what they can cut, what they can afford. So would I support bringing a tax before citizens without having them vote? No. But another example of where we need to cut, and I'm firm about this because I don't believe politicians should be exempt from the sacrifices every one of us has to make. It makes no sense that in the past 4 years, while every budget across the board in Las Cruces has been cut, only one has not: the salary of city politicians. The mayor received a 15% pay increase in the past 4 years. More importantly, not once has the idea of cutting their own salaries come into place. That's a vote we should put up for Las Cruces.
And we continue now with another question. Las Cruces has many areas along roadways that are unfinished. These range from high-profile areas like Loman, just east of Telshore, to subdivisions. How do you see this issue, and how would you address it if you are elected? And we begin with the mayor. Well,
I believe you're probably talking about medians that are unfinished and other particular areas. The council in 2007 put forward a substantial completion policy that now does not allow requires subdividers to basically complete certain types of services before they can start selling their lots. The council also passed an ordinance that required developers to actually pay for the medians and get those things repaired or get them beautified, landscaped. So I think those are some of the things that this council has done, and I'm proud to say that I supported it, and we passed that through.
Okay, Mr. Huerta.
Well, I already described in detail how impact fees are going to hurt the ability for the average Las Crucesan to see their roads, their infrastructure, infield, inside of the city, improved. Impact fees are going to hurt. But the bigger question here is where City Council prioritizes. The way I like to describe it is in a grading scale, A through F, we have Las Crucesans who are living A lives. And the City Council over the past 4 years has done everything they can to make that an A to an A+, while the rest of us are living C, D, and F lives. What we need to do is have a City Council led by a mayor who again focuses on the vast majority of Las Crucesans, the 35% of Las Cruces children who are living in poverty, the 1 out of 5 Las Crucesans who are living in poverty, the unemployed who now, with real unemployment numbers, hit nearly 15%. The bigger question is how we refocus on Las Crucesans.
Councilor Connor.
Medians are an interesting subject because the majority of the medians that are outstanding and have not been completed are in one central part of our community, which is in District 6. Over the years, those medians could have been completed had there been a push prior to me arriving at City Council when those construction projects took place. But now we go to the state and we try to find money from there when all along there was people in place to take care of that. The mayor mentions 2007 as the complete streets. That was not something the council voted on. I verified that this morning. It was a policy brought in January of 2007 by the staff and regulated by the staff, and not a vote by the city council. Complete streets is a way to do it, but it was monitored within the policies and not law by the city council.
Okay, our next question. Some say that it is difficult to open a new business in the city due to the planning and inspection process. What would you propose to do to change this perception or to improve the process itself? Mr. Huerta, we begin with you.
Well, those people are right in their criticisms. And so there's a few things that we can do. Number one, we need consistency, across City Hall. A big indicator for an individual looking at Las Cruces, because don't be confused, word gets around, and it gets around quick. If we have a reputation that we're not consistent with our practices, that's the biggest thing that can hurt us. So we need a push from the council, from the mayor, even in a symbolic way, to be consistent. Number two, what we can do is have a fast-track application online, the same way the city of Boston does, the same way New Orleans does, so that individuals don't have to go to City Hall. They can do it online. The other thing that we can do, and I strongly believe in this, because it's for so many people the first thing they see when they look up Las Cruces, we can make our website look a lot more user-friendly. Not only for Las Cruces, as people are determining whether or not they're going to move here, but for businesses, so that they can see through our website that one, we know what we're doing, two, we're efficient, and three, we're going to work with you.
Councilor Connor.
Mrs. Huerta, could you repeat the question?
Absolutely. Some say that it is difficult to open a new business in the city due to the planning and inspection process. What would you propose to do to change this perception or to improve the process itself?
Thank you. Planning and inspections has been holding back business for a long time. When I arrived at City Council in 2003, I have a banking background that tells you that the minute that business is going to start, before they turn any ground, they're already paying interest on it. So moving them ahead as quickly as possible is important for the banker, important for the investor, and important for the community. And so planning and inspections are not holding hands right now, and yet the process has been delayed. Just look at what's on the Texas side of the border right now from New Mexico. All business is moving in that direction. We need to learn from El Paso. I sat with the Community Development Department in El Paso. You can put in a permit, and within 48 hours you can have your plans approved. I have helped business, doctor's offices that have waited 9 months before they could even turn the ground because of the process that delays them.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor.
Well, I will say that in the last 12 months, there's been over 600 business permits pooled, creating over 2,000 jobs in the city of Las Cruces. That's a tremendous feat for our city and its people. But I will say that there are some changes that need to be done in our inspection department, our community development department. I think I mentioned that we're looking at possibly two things. One, either incentives to, let's say, for example, you have a plumbing inspector, and electrical inspector. Perhaps if we pay them more and they're willing to get their license for either or, we pay them more, and we could maybe even do away with one of the other positions, so that now we have a higher paid employee who can do both inspections instead of just one and the other. And or we can actually have an inspector who follows through the entire process so that they don't have to change all the time. So those are some of the areas that we're looking at changing.
Thank you.
All right, as we continue, I want to remind the candidates to please not reference your opponents or your perceptions of your opponents' positions as we continue, so that we can continue to fairly get to as many questions as possible. Our next question, Las Cruces has been expanding its city attractions from an indoor aquatic center to a new museum building in the works downtown. How do you see this priority, and how would you approach it if you are elected? And we begin with Councilor Connor.
Las Cruces has had a lot of expansion in services and quality of life products that come to the community. We have waited 10 years to finish the intermodal system. 10 years where the money has been in place from the FTA and federal government since 2001. And this hasn't pushed forward because it hasn't been a priority of the community, of the council. We have land, we have dollars, we have a design, and it sits there and waits because it hasn't been put onto an agenda to finish and complete it. It won't even start yet. The museum downtown, we bought that property in 2006. We have $2.1 million sitting in an account somewhere to move the museum out of the mall and into the home that we bought for it in downtown. And we spend $70,000 a year in rent because we can't get it off the ground, and this council has not put it as a priority. It's been my priority since the beginning.
Mayor Miyagishima.
Quality of life is important to attract new businesses because their employees are going to be looking for certain things. I have a report here from the American International Mobility Resources, and they target certain areas that I'm pleased to say that Las Cruces is working in. Good climate, aside from July and August when it gets kind of hot, but we don't have the floods and the earthquakes and the hurricanes. We have good schools. We're working with Las Cruces Public Schools and our after-school programs and other joint ventures as far as recreation. We have low crime. In fact, our crime rate was down in 2010, and we also have a police review board, which is doing very well. Healthcare access is another important thing. We have here in Las Cruces access to healthcare that many people, even in El Paso, can't have access to, that you can only get at UNM or in Albuquerque. Some of our activities we have are for artists, theaters, performing arts center, and real estate. We're the top 3 least affected real estate markets in the nation.
Okay, Mr. Huerta.
When we talk about quality of life and activities, I think we should break it down. We've done a decent job of improving the quality of life for a lot of the retirees who are moving to the community. But what we know from studies, what we know from our own lives, and one specifically from the Brookings Institute, quality of life, specifically activities for people, children and young people to take part in, is the biggest indicator in whether industry moves to a certain area. What we need to do in Las Cruces is have a concentrated effort at improving the quality of life for young people, for young families, and for young professionals. What does that mean? We need to have a refocus on music, but music that affects young people, young families, on the arts, but arts that affect young people, young families, young professionals. We need to have a real effort at neighborhood bars. I don't know how many of you have an opportunity to go out to High Desert Brewery, but if you did, on any given night of the week, you'd see young professionals, young lawyers, young engineers. That's one of the few places they have in town to go. We need to make more areas for people like that.
Well, I think we're at the final question before you have an opportunity to give your final remarks. So here is the last question.
We may have a little more time.
We'll just see. The last question. What are the top 3 priorities for our great city? And we'll begin with Mr. Mayor.
Well, the top priorities for our city, we need to complete our 911 building. Public safety is very important, and we've identified an area for our 911 and our police and fire stations. I think it's important to also continue our downtown revitalization. Downtown is happening. It is an area that people are excited about being. We're fortunate that we have the #1 rated farmers market in the entire nation. And also what we need to do, we need to always make sure that we have great job opportunities for not only our citizens, but also our returning veterans as they come back from Iran and Afghanistan. Also, well, that's 3, so I have one more, but that's 3.
Okay. Mr. Huerta.
Well, our biggest priority in this recession and this economy that has affected Las Cruces more than it has the average New Mexican and more than it has the average American, we need to put all of our efforts into putting people back to work. That is the #1 priority. Number 2, I'm sick and tired of an old approach to education in this town that says City Hall has nothing to do with how we educate our young people. I couldn't disagree more. We need to have a 21st century innovative approach so that we understand all of us are in this together, and educating our young people is what matters. But third, something we can actually get done, and we can get done very quickly, get rid of the failed red light cameras. They don't work, they're expensive, they're intrusive, and did you know, every time you receive one of them, Nearly 50% of your citation goes to a foreign corporation. We need to get rid of them.
Counselor Connor.
Thank you. Public safety has got to be at the top of the list, not only in police and fire, but I'm the chair of the 911 Center, and 2 years ago we took the 911 Center from doing nothing to moving it forward into a project that is now viable. And it was through that board that we were able to define what the 911 Center is. And from that board, a comprehensive plan to create a public safety campus on the East Mesa where we've been lacking. So public safety comes at the top of the list. We can talk about jobs and incentives that come with that, but government doesn't create jobs. Government creates the policies that give jobs the incentives and the ability to strive. And the third part is to remove the red tape. Red tape from getting business done, red tape from the process, red tape from the delays, and the red tape of government that hinders business, and at the same time opening up business.
Thank you, Counselor Connor. And we are a little bit ahead of schedule, so we have time for some additional questions before closing statements. And this question was actually submitted by a viewer via email. And by the way, you can submit questions to KRWG by email anytime, and that address is feedback@nmsu.edu. And that question from a viewer: what do you think about the Las Cruces Country Club golf course off North Main Street being turned into a city park? And we begin with Mr. Huerta.
We need to do it. We need to do it as soon as possible. We need to find the way to do it. We need to bring partners in together, but we need to get it done. It was an issue 4 years ago in the campaign where there were some promises, but nothing's come to fruition. We need to get it done, and I can be an advocate, and I will be the partner to help move this project forward.
Councilor Connor.
Well, I'm on the opposite side of that issue, because last year I wrote an article, an op-ed piece, why the country club should not be in the hands of the city. The city can barely maintain the recreational parks that we have right now, and our children are suffering because our fields are not up to speed. The reason that that country club is even a conversation is because neighbors in that area do not want to have something behind their doors that they've had an open space to. The city of Las Cruces cannot afford 110 acres. Why do we want to take over more land when we have tea time and we have downtown? But we need more commercial and real retail business in Las Cruces. That's a prime piece of property for doing so, where you could have retail and a mixed-use community within the same property. When will the city know that we're not the ones that create business, it's the public that does?
Mayor Miyagishima.
This is something that I've been working on for 4 years. It is 110 acres of green space that we don't want to see go away. One of the things that I bring to the job of experience is in my background in finance and real estate. I have committed to the public that I would not increase taxes to acquire this. I'm confident and still confident there are ways to be able to work arrangements with different types of lessees to be able to still acquire the property and it pay for itself.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and we are at that point where...
Not quite yet.
Not
We've
quite.
Got,
we still have time for one more question.
We still have some time for some additional questions.
You have an important one
and I actually do have another one. We did get a number of questions submitted via email. This is another question submitted via email. It says, are the city buses still running at a financial loss? Do you have any plans to change the city bus system or ideas for increasing use by the public? And for this question, we begin with Councilor Connor.
The city buses are very dear to me because I know that there are a lot of people that rely on that as a transportation mode to get from their home to their job or to pick up groceries. We also have Dial-A-Ride that is a part of that process where if you are disabled or unable to ride the public bus system, Roadrunner system, you're able to call Dial-A-Ride and they come straight to your home. All public transportation across this nation does not pay for itself. It's subsidized from federal dollars and the Federal Transportation Administration. I have been a promoter of the bus system, And when I came to council, there were 3 bus shelters. Today there are 80 on the ground, and it was because I created the Adopt a Stop program. I went to businesses within the community to raise funds to buy shelters, and then from those funds we could triple how many went on the ground. Today there's almost 80 shelters there. The bus system is very vital to a lot of people.
Mayor Miyagishima.
The bus system costs about $1.5 million a year to operate. We receive about $500,000 in fares. Unfortunately, that difference is not subsidized by the federal government. It comes out of our general fund. It is something that we recognize its importance. We recognize that we could do some different changes, such as maybe Sunday bus systems, but right now it's constantly being revamped for different types of routes that we could use, that we could utilize and maybe have our residents utilize. One of the things that we need to work on more is with our residents with different types of challenges, whether they're visually impaired or hearing impaired. We're looking at changing some of that so that they can increase their ridership abilities as well.
Okay.
And we do have one more, Mr. Huerta.
I'm new to running for office, and one of the things that I'm learning is oftentimes what politicians tell you, though it might look right on paper, isn't what you feel on the ground. And this is one of those examples where if you talk to any Las Crucean who rides the buses, it's just not working. It can be better. We can expand the times. We can look at new innovative approaches to how we use the bus system. Dial-a-ride is a particular problem. Sure, the service is available, but for those of you seniors who actually have to use Dial-a-ride, let's just hope you don't get sick and have to use it, because on average it takes 4 to 5 days to actually have the service used. Here's a clear example where we can put money into it. I know it costs money, but this needs to be a priority because it really expresses the values. We care about our seniors, we care about low-income people, and we care about their ability to get to a job or to get to a nonprofit or to get to the doctor.
Thank you.
Okay, and I believe we have another question from one of our viewers, and the question is, can more jobs be created in Las Cruces, and if so, how can we do that? And we'll begin with Mr. Mayor.
Well, that's a good question. One of the things, as I mentioned before, there are certain incentives, but we do have the City of Las Cruces. I was talking with our city manager earlier, well not today, but earlier in the year. We need to recognize the importance of economic development. We do continue funding Movida to the tune of $200,000, but we need to look at elevating our position of Economic Development Director to that of the status of our other directors there at the city. I think by doing so and staffing that a little bit better, we may be able to send a message to all those who are either here in Las Cruces or wishing to come to Las Cruces that we recognize and value the business, and by doing so I think that will send some messages. Also, as mentioned earlier in tonight, as far as our incentives, whether it's industrial revenue bonds or different types of incentives to, if they increase their salaries, to a certain level, we'll give them land. So those are some areas that we need to focus on.
Thank you. Mr. Huerta.
Well, it's important when you talk about creating jobs to understand the limitations, responsibilities, and powers of the mayor, what they can and can't do. Because we're in a legislative position, it is key, it is central that we have the ability to bring people together. What's unfortunate that we've seen over the past 4 and 8 years in Las Cruces is a divisiveness. Either you're pro-growth or anti-growth, you're pro-development or anti-development. That needs to stop. We need to understand that us up here, we're not the experts. And if you're looking for expertise from us, you're looking in the wrong place. The good place to look for expertise is with our realtors, with our teachers, with our builders, with our small business owners. But what we need most importantly up here is, number 1, the confidence to take information that we may not agree with, but 2, the intellectual curiosity to want to know what works. That's what we need in a mayor's position. That's what's going to help us get to the point to where we can have an environment that creates jobs.
Councillor Connor.
Again, city government does not create jobs. We create the environment that brings jobs to Las Cruces. And in the environment that we're currently sitting, that's not where we're talking about. We're not asking people to come to Las Cruces because we're not friendly enough. We're asking them to spend more money to come into Las Cruces. We're asking them to put more investment into Las Cruces, and then we want them to also be a part of the community without any payback from that. Economic development is important to the community through the private sector. The private sector creates jobs. The city of Las Cruces needs to step back, reduce the policies, reduce the impact fees, reduce the cost that it takes to be a business in Las Cruces, and open our doors with open arms to invite them back to Las Cruces.
Thank you.
And we have time for one final question before our closing statements. This is also from a viewer.
It is.
And it says, I would like to know what the candidates plan to do to improve the animal welfare issues in our city and county. And we begin with Mr. Huerta.
Well, I'll tell you again, this has been probably the most surprising issue to me in this campaign. What we have in Las Cruces, and I think what you need in leadership, is the ability to be honest and direct. Unfortunately, what we have in Las Cruces is a situation where personalities are more important than getting the job done. That needs to stop. We need an effort that focuses more on animals than the old players. We need a focus on making sure that we get the things done than we do about talking about the individuals who are involved with it. We need to do a few things. Number one, we need to educate Las Crucens on why it's important to spay or neuter. That's probably the biggest thing that we can do. And as mayor, the most important thing that I would do would go out to the community and talk about why it's important that we take care of our animals. The other part that's interesting when it comes to our treatment of animals, study after study shows an individual's capacity to hurt an animal directly deals with their capacity to hurt another human being. It starts with education.
Councilor Connor.
Thank you. The animal welfare situation came to pass at the city of Las Cruces about 3 years ago when the Humane Society turned over the shelter to the city and to the county. At that time, I went on to the Animal Services Board and now serve as the vice chair of that committee. Over the last 3 years, we've put together a joint powers agreement. We've put all the legislative priorities in place, and now just last week we approved the ordinances that will be coming to the City Council and to the county as a partnership to agree on, so that we have the same animal welfare care in both city and county. This is an education system that is broken to our community. This is an education system that our community has to understand. We no longer live 20 years ago when we didn't put our animals as priority. And I've worked hard to bring those ordinances so that we can improve the system, not just within the municipality, but across the county.
Mayor Miyagishima.
Now, I've been working with the chairman of the Animal Services Board, Commissioner Garrett, for the past several weeks, and we've been meeting with interested stakeholders. We actually have put together the entire, what we refer to as pet network, probably 40 different individuals with different organizations, and brought them together for the first time to basically be able to work with one another to see what we can do, help educate the public, both city and county. And we have come up with some ideas. There is a 12-point plan, but one of the things we really want to focus on is the education of our residents and the importance of having their dogs and cats spayed and neutered. We think that's important. We're also looking at funding to be able to have that available for our residents who can't afford that, because we recognize that if we can stop that, we should be able to help reduce the unwanted euthanasia of our animals and hopefully go to a no-kill policy.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, I believe we are now finally at the closing statements. So final remarks, we will begin with Councilor Connor.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for having us here today. And more importantly, thank you for paying attention to the voices that are being said across our community. I've been walking neighborhoods for over the last 3 months now, and what I'm hearing at the door is people don't feel safe. They don't feel that Las Cruces is as safe as it was 10 years ago. We are struggling with funding how many police officers should be on the street. We're talking about police officers that are in technical areas, detectives, gang units, targeting neighborhood threats. These officers are stretched to the max, and people are feeling it in our communities. Look at the police blotter every single day, and those are not all of the reports that are taking place. Until we take public safety to the next level and know that public safety is what brings jobs, brings economic development, brings tourism, we have to let everybody know we're safe.
Thank you. Mayor Miyagishima.
Our country and our state have been going through some serious challenges, and that's going to take some serious people to solve them. If our state and federal legislators aren't able to do it, they're probably just going to reduce funding, which in turn is going to fall on us here at the local level. I submit to you that I have the experience to continue being your mayor. I have walked the walk. In the last 2 years, we have reduced our budget by over $7.5 million without any type of significant reduction in services. We have had no jobs lost, we have had no furloughs, we've had no 4-day work week like many of our surrounding governments have had. I want to leave this with you tonight. I personally care about each and every one of you. I wake up every day making sure that I can make this the best city that we possibly can be. Whether it's providing better jobs or better trained personnel, safety personnel. So when you go to the polls on November 8th, remember that I, your mayor, cares about you. And I thank you for having this forum, and have a great day.
Thank you. Mr. Huerta.
My name is Michael Huerta, and I'm running for mayor because I sincerely think that we can do better. I was at Citizens Bank the other day, and in front of me was a senior couple. They had 4 bags of what was obviously change. I overheard them say that they'd been saving that change for years, hopefully to take a small vacation. They were cashing that change in that day just to get through the month. We can say what we want up here, but what matters most is what you feel on the ground, in your homes, in your families, at your schools. The question for you is, over the past 8 years, have you felt a better Las Cruces in your own homes? Over the past 4 years, have you felt a better Las Cruces in your own homes? If the answer is no, and I think it might be, I want you to know that we can do better. That's why I want to cut the salaries of our city politicians in half. Why? Because we'll save a lot of money? No, but because politicians shouldn't be exempt from the sacrifices that every one of us have to make. It's one thing to be a politician. It's another to be a real leader. I want to be your leader.
Thank you so much to the candidates and Dr. Margie Huerta and the Greater Las Cruces Chamber of Commerce. For KRWG, I'm Fred Martino. Make sure to vote on November 8th if you don't vote early.
Thank you.